And perhaps I'll let her, before we start, I just want to, KOS 44795. So there's a member, there's an attendee who has hand raised. If you don't mind, before we start, if I give them the opportunity to speak. Great.
And that's in the public forum.
Okay. But we do have a quorum.
We do have a quorum.
Yes. KOS 44795. I'm giving you the opportunity to speak briefly.
This is Christina Fugazi. I guess I'm on the wrong link, but I should be in attendance of the meeting. And this is what was in my email. So please refer me to the proper channel to get on.
Great. I'll go ahead and promote you. This is member Fugazi. Great. I'll go ahead and promote you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, there we go. Promote to panelist. Yes. Okay. Yes. Great. Perfect. So we're just waiting for member Marquez, who is just arriving now, and we have full attendance.
Great. Should I go ahead?
You can go ahead and get started.
Good afternoon. The time is 3:02, and I would like to call the executive committee meeting for today, Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025 to order. We are located in the large conference room in the Rotunda Building at 300 Frank H. Ogawa Plaza in Oakland, California, 94612. We also have members virtually from the following locations: Hayward City Hall, Conference Room 4A, 777 B Street in Hayward, California, 94541. Also, the City Council office in Pleasanton City Hall at 123 Main Street, Pleasanton, California, 94566. And finally, Stockton City Hall at 425 North El Dorado Street, Stockton, California, 95202. Members of the public wishing to make a comment during the meeting on an agenda item can do so either by using the raise hand function in Zoom or *9 if you're joining through telephone. Clerk, can you please take the roll call?
Thank you. Alameda County.
Okay. Present.
Thank you. Hayward.
Present.
Stockton.
Present.
Thank you. Pleasanton.
Present.
Piedmont.
Present.
San Leandro. Present. We have a quorum.
Okay, so welcome. That was our first agenda item, was welcome and roll call. Our second agenda, I'll start over. Our second agenda item is the election of chair and vice chair. So I have been the prior chair or current chair of this executive committee meeting. I have been promoted, thank you to my colleagues, to chair of the board of directors of Ava Community Energy, and so no longer will be able to serve as chair of this subcommittee. So at this time, I would entertain a motion from any of my colleagues as to who should replace me as chair, and then presumably the vice chair would potentially be vacant at that stage. So let's start with chair. Do we have any nominations for chair of the executive committee?
Move member Gonzalez of San Leandro.
Okay,
Second.
great. We have member Balch as making the motion, and member, is that Marquez, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't tell if it was member Roche or Marquez. You're in a split screen situation, which is great. As seconding the motion, and any discussion? Any public comment?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, no public comment.
Well, can I just add, Chair?
Yes, member Roche.
I support this motion. Thank you. Be glad to support it.
Great. Okay, any other further comments? All right, let's proceed to a roll call vote.
Thank you. Alameda County.
Aye.
Hayward.
Aye.
Stockton.
Yes.
Pleasanton.
Aye.
Piedmont.
Aye.
San Leandro.
Aye.
Motion's approved.
Motion is unanimous, and I am passing the gavel to our new Chair Gonzalez. Thank you very much.
So with that being said, we will take nominations for our committee vice chair.
Oh, it's a, you can speak, yes.
So I've got, I think Member Marquez, I think with her hand.
Yes. Yes, thank you. I would like, ooh, excuse me, slow down. I would like to nominate member Julie Roche as vice chair of the executive committee.
Okay, do I have a second?
I would like to second.
We've got a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, so we have a motion nominating Member Roche from Hayward as vice chair of our executive committee. Please vote.
Alameda County,
Aye.
Hayward,
Aye.
Stockton,
Yes.
Pleasanton,
Aye.
Piedmont,
Aye.
San Leandro.
Aye.
Motion is approved.
So at this point in time, we will close that agenda item, move to number 3, public comments. This item is reserved for persons wishing to address the executive committee on any AVA community energy related matters that are not otherwise on this meeting agenda. Public comments on matters listed on the agenda shall be heard at the time that the matter is called. As with all public comment, members of the public who wish to address the committee are customarily limited to 3 minutes per speaker and must complete an electronic speaker card. The executive committee chair, myself, may increase or decrease the time allotted to each speaker. Do we have any cards that have been submitted for item number 3?
There are no hands raised at this time. We have not received any public comment requests.
Requests.
Yes.
Perfect. So then I will close this item and move to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes from July 2nd, 2025. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll approve the minute. I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay, I've got a motion by member Roche. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
With a second from member Anderson. Is there any public comment on this item?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Seeing no public comment on this item and seeing no interest in further discussion, let's move to a vote, please.
Thank you. Alameda County,
She went to get water. She'll be
Yeah.
right back.
great, thank you. Hayward,
Yes.
Stockton,
Yes.
Pleasanton,
Aye.
Piedmont,
Aye.
San Leandro.
Aye.
40 minutes. Member Marquez is back.
I did review the minutes.
Thank you. Minutes are approved.
So that will move to item number 5, which is an informational presentation. And to whom shall I pass the baton? To Annie.
I will take the baton. Thank you very much.
Please proceed.
Right. So while Adrian gets back up on the screen, thank you, everyone. So this is a little bit of a repeat, but putting it on the record officially, I brought a version of this presentation to the executive committee in July, but because we lost quorum just before this item, we weren't able to record it. We weren't able to officially accept public comment. So this is very similar, but it is updated because since July, we've made some additional progress. So while it's okay.
Technical difficulty.
So for the record, I'm Annie Henderson, Chief Customer Officer at AVA Community Energy. And this item is on customer programs strategic roadmap. And this is really just looking at the development process that we are bringing, that we propose. I will note that due to a number of items that need full board action this month, we are not intending to bring this to the full board, but we are open to your feedback on that. But for the reason that we were not able to officially deliver this in July to the executive committee, as well as wanting to reserve that space in the full board meeting in a couple weeks for action items, we thought this was a good forum to come back to. I'm going to go ahead and get started if that's okay. For those who perhaps are online, you can pull up the PDF on our website where you found the link to this Zoom meeting. I am on slide number 2. It's the objective of the presentation. So the objective of this item is to provide the executive committee and members of the public with an overview of the process to develop a strategic roadmap specifically for customer programs at AVA through the year 2032. I do want to note that this effort is focused solely on customer programs and does not include any strategy or planning around power procurement for our commodity electricity service. There is no action on this item. It's just for review and discussion. I'll pause here.
Thank you. Sorry. We are having technical difficulties. So I just want to alert the chair that we might want to take a brief recess while we boot the main computer.
Okay, for the benefit of the public listening online and other members, we are taking a brief recess. We should expect to be back in approximately how many minutes? Approximately 5 minutes. So we will plan to return at 3:16 PM and we'll see if we can achieve that at that time. We are in recess.
Okay.
Okay, at this point in time, we are reconvening, at least momentarily, because it's slightly before I said we would reconvene by about 30 seconds. But we're going to use this to double check. If someone in Hayward can just speak up so that we know that you are there.
Can you hear us?
Perfect. Someone in Pleasanton, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's perfect. And then someone in Stockton. Stockton, yes.
Yes, I hear you.
Thank you, Member Fugazi. Okay, at this point in time, it is now 3:16 when I indicated that we would reconvene. So we are officially back in session, going to item number 4, or no, item number 5, Customer Program Strategic Roadmap. If you
Okay.
can please proceed again, Ms. Henderson.
Thank you. Sure. All right. So we're back at the Customer Program Strategic Roadmap. And again, this is an overview of the process that we'll be taking to develop this roadmap. It is a bit of a repeat from last month, but we lost quorum, so we're able to record or officially record the public comment around this, but there are some updates as well. So with that, we can go to the next slide, please, Adrienne. So the objective of this item is to provide the executive committee and members of the public an overview of the process to develop a strategic roadmap for customer programs at AVA through the year 2032. I want to note that this effort is focused solely on customer programs. It does not include any strategy or planning around our power procurement for our commodity electricity service. There's no action on this. This is discussion. And we are at this point not intending to bring it to the September meeting due to a number of action items that need the full board review. So the purpose of the customer programs roadmap, why are we looking to develop this? We want to use this roadmap to align on a high level goal. And I'll have more on that in the next slide. This effort will help us set our priorities in achieving that goal and identify how to best measure success towards the goal. Additionally, the roadmap can serve as a living framework that informs our operational decisions, recommendations to the board, and guides discussions with stakeholders. The clear roadmap will also improve internal planning and public transparency. Again, the roadmap is focused on creating a strategic framework for customer programs and the associated budget allocated through our local development fund. It does not address strategy for our commodity electricity product, and it will not be as detailed as to provide program implementation plans. Anything of that nature would come back to the board at a future time for appropriate budget authorization and approval of the program. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm 2 ahead now. I am on the slide titled Working Assumption. Thank you. So in order to begin work with an outside consultant to support us on this process and to lay the groundwork of a market assessment, we need to have a baseline agreement on the goal of AVA customer programs. Our working assumption is that all customer programs should contribute to decarbonization. Decarbonization is one of the main reasons AVA Community Energy was created as a means to address climate change brought on by greenhouse gas emissions. The goal of decarbonization aligns with the mission of the agency, our local JPA members' climate action plans, and state policy targets. In addition, we want all efforts at AVA to support energy affordability. Customer programs will focus on decarbonization as the primary goal, but affordability is always on our minds. And again, with decarbonization as our top goal, we acknowledge that there are other things important to AVA and its stakeholders. We will incorporate into the roadmap development process a way to identify what is most important while achieving decarbonization. We refer to these as our portfolio priorities. Some potential portfolio priorities are listed here. It is not an exhaustive list, but I think the examples are important to keep in mind because they are so important to us as an agency and for our stakeholders. So things like addressing vulnerable communities, cost effectiveness, both for the agency as well as the individual customer, public health, access to programs for both residential and commercial customers, local economic development, resilience, geographic distribution, local clean power gen, equity, and of course, focusing on multiple sectors such as transportation and building electrification that are major contributors to greenhouse gas emissions across our service territory. So to put the goal and priorities in a little more context, we're looking for every customer program to contribute to decarbonization, but not every program will address every priority. So there may be different programs addressing different priorities, but every program should contribute to our decarbonization goal. So as an example, a direct install program offering the replacement of natural gas stoves with an induction range could be offered and is offered, in fact, to income qualified customers in zip codes with high air pollution. So this may not be cost effective for AVA as an agency, but it does contribute to decarbonization and supports vulnerable communities. So wanted to focus a little bit on the process and overall timeline. So there's been a lot of work leading up to this point. We spent a lot of time clarifying how to approach the development of this roadmap, including some internal brainstorming across departments, working sessions to inform the scoping of an RFP, initial socializing of the concepts. And that has all brought us to this point today. There are several steps in the process to develop the roadmap for customer programs, and we are looking to contract with an external consultant to help with that process. So beyond this initial development work and early socialization, we anticipate some key milestones to begin in November of this year and culminate in a final roadmap by October 2026, so over a year out. The main steps include developing a market assessment to understand what is and what is not working in the market for customer programs that address decarbonization. The next sort of several chevrons up here are somewhat iterative.
Annie, I don't think the slides are.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Adrian. I'll make sure to note that. Okay, so the next several chevrons are somewhat iterative. We'll be thinking about what our portfolio priorities are while creating a catalog of potential program concepts and then identifying how those program concepts can be measured to show their contribution towards decarbonization. At the end, we intend to have a roadmap that acts as our guide for customer programs through 2032. And now throughout all these steps, the staff, along with the consultant, will engage with key stakeholders through our typical public meeting forums, the board meeting, exec committees, our community advisory committee meetings, collaboration with municipal staff, which is something we have continually done, but we will certainly be bringing this topic to them, and then engagement with other stakeholders. Now, the format of that engagement, we are looking to the consultant to help us develop that engagement plan. So we're not speaking to exactly what that format is yet, but that is something that we would be bringing back to the board as an update. So if we could go to the next slide, please. The work to date, we presented last month or in July to the executive committee. We did bring this to the CAC, even though it didn't go to the full board. We wanted to make sure they were aware. We've done the same for this meeting and anticipate it'll be on the September CAC agenda. And we have brought this to what we call our MuniPals, our municipal staff convening. And those are the staff focused on sustainability at our local member agencies. We've also created an internal staff working group that represents various functions across the agency. That will help in informing the process and the outcomes, as well as a Tiger team. It's myself, JP, who's here with us today, Felice Ventura, and Allison Lopez. We will be publishing an RFP for consulting services in the next few days in order to kick off the process. Any feedback that we receive today could be incorporated, if necessary, by revision. And a summary outline of that scope of work is included as an attachment to this agenda item. And finally, just a reminder that the budget for the consulting work was approved as part of the local development budget for this fiscal year. Okay, we can go to the next slide. This is our last one. As we look ahead, there are a few milestones for the board and the executive committee to be aware of. In the next few days, we will issue an RFP. And so that will be going out in October. Staff will review and select a consultant through that RFP process. In November, we will look to bring that consulting services agreement to the board for approval. And then depending on what we hear back in these proposals and from the selected consultant, I anticipate that early next year, we will be bringing an update to the board on the timing of key work products and an initial outline of our public engagement. So that is the end. There are a number of slides after this that are some of the slides that we presented in July, just for background and reference. But with that, that is the end of the presentation, and I welcome your comments and questions.
Okay, so at this point in time, what we're going to do is we're going to move to public comment. And we'll hear from the public, and then we'll come back for discussions, questions, and the like. So do we have any public comment on this item?
Yes, we do. Jim Lutz, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Yeah, Jim Lutz. I'm on CAC, but I'm speaking for myself right now. And my thoughts are that I want to thank Annie and the local development team for all this thoughtful way of process to put it forward. There's a couple of overarching concerns I have. One is all this local development is focusing only on the goal of decarbonization. But if you look back to the JPA, the Joint Powers Agreement that started AVA, there were also co-equal goals of local development, local jobs, local generation. So it seems like a major part of the goals of AVA are not being considered. And so that's one concern. Another concern is this is focused just on customer programs. And I don't want to belittle that, but I want to point out that AVA does a lot more stuff. And there should be a strategic roadmap, whether it's rolled into this strategic roadmap or a separate process that considers where the generation comes from, what sort of generation is done. AVA is, basically $1 billion a year organization, and we have a lot. We should be pulling our weight, and focusing solely on customer programs seems to be restricting ourselves. Then there's a few more concerns I have about the process. It'd be good to see community involvement and CAC involvement in the development of the RFP before it was released. And also concerned that there's the community workshops on the objectives, the program concepts, and the metrics are after the consultant writes the reports on those. And it seems like it'd be important for the consultant to get public input on those ideas. But I want to congratulate you for doing a great job on this. I wholeheartedly support it. I just want it to be bigger and better. Thank you.
Thank you. And H, recognized for 3 minutes. And H?
No, just the same name.
Perhaps we'll come back to Ann
Can you
H.
hear me now?
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Ann Harvey. I'm speaking for 350 East Bay, which is the Alameda County section of 350 Bay Area. And we are volunteers working toward a clean energy future with racial, economic, and environmental justice. We appreciate a lot of the initiatives and programs and success of AVA, and do have a couple. I'm afraid I'm can be somewhat redundant with Jim Lutz, but concerns. The first is with respect to the timeline, and we want to urge you to include community input from the start. including on program design. Otherwise, the community is not able to contribute, but is just informed after the fact, and we would like to participate in the process. And then with respect to the scope, decarbonization, affordability, and all of the listed potential portfolio priorities are excellent. We agree with all those, but we are also distressed that the roadmap explicitly excludes commodity supply, and that the local development fund, which seems to be what succeeds the local development business plan, also completely leaves out local energy sourcing. So we hope that AVA has not abandoned developing local energy resources, which can not only provide local jobs, but is also crucial for resilience and for avoiding cost to customers of adding transmission lines, which is significant. Perverse regulations like the flat rate transmission access charge and the over the fence rule make it very hard, but they should not defeat the local development business plans, and instead creative and collaborative efforts are essential. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There are no further hands raised at this time.
At this point in time, I will close public comment and come back here. Before beginning member dialogue and questions and the like, I want to pass the floor to you, Ms. Henderson, see if there's anything that you would like to comment on with respect to what our public commenters have offered.
Sure. I think this was mentioned by both public commenters, the public engagement aspect. And at this point, that is somewhat open-ended. We certainly want to leverage the existing structure that we have in the public meetings that support public comment, public noticing around the board and our CAC, certainly. But to the extent we are leaving it as something of a blank page that we want to work with the consultant on, we are indicating in the RFP, and I think this was indicated within the very high level outline that we shared, we are looking for expertise from the consultant in doing this kind of engagement, stakeholder and community engagement. So we're looking for their recommendations before establishing exactly what that plan is. But we, perhaps the wording was not accurate in what I provided, but we certainly have the intention of this being an iterative process where we continue to get feedback and also share information throughout the process.
Thank you. So at this point in time, I'm going to go to members. If you'd raise your hand for comment, beginning with Member Fugazi.
There we go. Okay, thank you so much. I am so happy that this is on the agenda. I know I want to, first of all, I want to thank Howard for coming out to Stockton and sitting down with me. I will be fully transparent and letting you know I'm surprised I don't have two black eyes and a bloody nose, because I am getting so beat up over this, and I have tried to educate people, but they even come to our council meeting. So I just kind of want to go through some of the things I saw in this. So affordability, you know, on the bill, there are charges, there are credits, and people don't understand what those are. And they are vulnerable communities. We have people who have gotten a bill for like $2,000, and they have never seen a bill like that in their lives. And I've gotten copies of them. They've given them to me. And I said, well, you've got a little credit here and you've got a credit there. But they're just like, I don't know how I'm going to pay this. I haven't gotten anything like this before. We have people who have solar that then have the true up charge that then is added to it. So I guess, you know, and commercial as well, where they're like, oh, you know, we anticipated, you know, our bills, but not the jump that it is. And we have those in our community, obviously, that have medical needs that we are working with. So I have mixed messages coming. I have those that tell me, oh, on the phone, they told me 6 months, but then, oh, I've got like a letter and it tells me, oh, 2 billing cycles. I just need help. I would say that collaboration with municipal staff, if my people have like a line to go to, somebody that is really going to be able to address the needs of my community on this. And sustainability, I mean, we're looking at this into the future, but I have a number of constituents who really are confused and prepared to jump ship and go to the dark side, we'll say, but go to the other energy provider in our community. And I don't drink out of plastic. I am very green as much as I can be, but when it comes down to it for our community members, it literally is dollars and cents. That's what it comes down to. They are at the point now where they're just like, we have members who are barely getting by that are like, I don't care if it's clean energy, I need it to be affordable energy. And then moving on to the next steps, I would recommend TV commercials and streaming services to run those commercials on. When I was on the Air Pollution Control District Board, yeah, they did billboards, but who cares about that? We need to get the information to the people who are our customers. And so I would strongly suggest that a lot of people stream, have the streaming services, and you got to watch the commercial. I mean, you don't get out of it. And I know that can be a bit more affordable, or a lot more affordable. So I would, whoever the consultant is, when they put it in or you put out the RFP, they need to have, in my opinion, experience in using those platforms to get the information out there. And so as we move forward, we're here working for our communities. You are here working for our communities. AVA staff are here working for our communities. This is all about community. And in order for us to grow and strengthen, as a proponent of clean energy, we really need to be in the communities that are being hit the hardest by this, because they don't understand. And I will say, I've spoken on it, looking at the PG&E transmission, going on their lines, their fees, and then my electricity and going over it. We just have a lot of confused people. So putting out this information, really getting it out, getting it into the hands of our customers, I think as obviously is a priority. And whatever I can do to help on my end, you all can use my office. You're more than welcome to come here to City Hall, and we'll have people come in and we can sit side by side. I will not hang you out to dry, but I really have an obligation to the members of my community. And so I'm in support of this. I think that we need to do more and not less. So
Thank you for your input. What I took from that was more commentary than a request for a specific response. Is that correct?
Well, I would say under next steps, though, making sure that definitely that you're utilizing streaming systems, streaming services in order to get the information out. Also working with municipal staff, how we can make that work. And that collaboration, because we're at the front line here, and definitely getting into our vulnerable communities, which is one of your goals. But what that looks like and how we do that, I would like to be part of that conversation. So
Perfect. And at this point in time, I'm going to go to Hayward first and then come to Howard. So whoever raised the hand in Hayward, please.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm assuming Howard wants to answer the question to Mayor Fugazi, so I'm happy to defer to Howard first, and then I can, because I have a separate question.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Howard next.
Great, thank you for that. First of all, apologies that I'm remote today and not with the main meeting. I was notified of a close COVID exposure, so just maintaining a safe distance. But Director Fugazi, just a really quick commentary there, because I know we've had direct outreach as well on this exact topic, and your staff has reached out to our staff as well. So we're hoping to help educate Stockton communities as much as we can on some of the billing issues. Obviously, summer rates tend to be very high rates, as a couple points I just wanted to communicate to you here, take the opportunity to reiterate this public forum, which are right now, rates are high. We recognize that. A lot of that, unfortunately, is on the PG&E side of the bill related to transmission and distribution. And we always want to take every opportunity to help our customers understand the different components of the bill. For Stockton, of course, EVA is at a 5% discount relative to PG&E. Although we know rates are still high, that discount is still on a high bill. And so we want to make sure we're helping to address as much as we can. But I think what you're highlighting here is a need for us to just continually educate customers, particularly new customers in Stockton that are less familiar with Ava Community Energy, and take every opportunity we have to do that. So happy to connect offline and talk about more effective means to do that, of course, to make sure that customers have the right information and making their energy choices, and understanding that Ava Community Energy is providing a discount relative to PG&E and providing those reliable services. On this particular topic on the agenda today related to our customer programs roadmap, I did want to just take the opportunity to emphasize, of course, affordability is a key component here. I also want to sort of draw a distinction between our wholesale energy products and some of the customer programs that we do. Obviously, they overlap, but I think a lot of your commentary is more on our wholesale energy products, Bright Choice, Renewable 100, and thinking about the cost factors there, ensuring that we're addressing affordability issues. And so we're going to continue to work on that. Our customers program piece is somewhat separate and distinct to that. And I want to highlight that while we've placed an emphasis on decarbonization there, affordability is absolutely part of that lens. I know that was part of the public commentary as well. That is not something that we've set aside as a non-critical issue, but rather said you have to prioritize things. So we want to look at some distinct benefits as it relates to decarbonization, as it relates to customer programs, and then secondarily layer on things related to affordability and some of those other portfolio related priorities that Annie touched upon. So just wanted an opportunity to highlight some of those things in the public forum. Really appreciate your engagement, and definitely looking forward to following up online to continue to find ways to educate and communicate effectively with your communities.
Okay, back to Hayward.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on one of the I think it was Jim Lutz's comment about the strategic roadmap, and that, the scope of this just being on customer programs. Because I think we've had some discussion about, like, there is, is there a plan, Howard, that there is going to be a organizational strategic roadmap for the overall strategy of the organization, which I think was his point, right? It shouldn't just, we're such a big organization now, it shouldn't just be on this one program, but or this one piece. If you wouldn't mind answering that, Howard.
Absolutely. So I think what we're trying to do is prioritize different workflows. In the past, the local development business plan, which was a work product from consultants that predated staffing, really captured a lot of different areas under the under energy umbrella, some of them operational, some of them related to wholesale procurement, some of that related to local development, some of that related to customer programs. So it was sort of everything under the sun related to Ava Community Energy, East Bay Community Energy at the time. We presented on some of those results and workflows that we worked on in sort of the first phase of our operations, and we did that a number of months back. I think what we wanted to do here was really focus specifically on customer programs, so we could sort of carve out different pieces and make sure that we were focusing that discussion and prioritizing that discussion on certain pieces at different times. So this one is very much so focused on customer programs. We are trying to draw that distinction and pull that apart. Obviously on our wholesale energy, that is, that is the bulk of our services and our revenues today. And we, of course, have very active discussions with the board in terms of rate setting, in terms of reserves, in terms of content. There is not one strategic roadmap that we have associated with that, but I think really everything we talk about in our everyday board meetings really touch on that in many ways. So I think there is some interest in maybe coalescing some of that information, both in an ad hoc board committee, but as well as in a public forum with the full board. But for today's purpose, I just want to draw the distinction of this is really customer programs focused. That does not mean we're ignoring everything else. It's just that we are trying to cut up different types of workflows to make them more digestible and more focused in terms of the conversation and the workflows.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks for just, laying that out there. All right, great, thanks. And then Annie, thank you to your comments about the community involvement, because I agree, you'd want community involvement early on, but I get your point that you want to get the consultant to tell you how to go about the community involvement. So I think that message got across. So thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And thank you, Howard.
I have a question.
Yep.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the feedback so far. I just wanted to ask if we proceed with this timeline, is there any urgency with launching the RFP by the end of September, it sounds like, based off the timeline? What are the pros and cons of delaying it? What I heard my colleague just say is we're relying on the consultant to provide their ideas of what community outreach and input would look like. So just want to be clear on that, but just, is there any urgency with this timeline? I guess is my first question.
There is some urgency, as you can see. So the final product is not planned to be delivered until October 2026. We want to acknowledge that we want to have a robust process to get this input from the board, from stakeholders, but we also need to move it forward because this is going to help direct our resourcing allocation. So both from a budget perspective, but also staffing perspective, and the issues of climate change are also not going away. So we want to have this plan, within a reasonable time frame. I want to sort of perhaps ask a question or provide some clarification. The RFP is seeking a consultant who would help do like the market assessment to develop some of these initial program concepts, but this is all in concert with staff. And so I think that we are in a good place in terms of the pre-work that we've done as staff and the diligence we've done to outline a scope that we feel is going to produce good work products. So I suppose my question is, what additional clarification would there be in that scope that a delay would support?
Yeah, I guess I'm raising it only because obviously community engagement and input is important. As you mentioned earlier, you did present this on July. We lost quorum, unfortunately, so wasn't recorded. So we lost some time there. So we're playing catch up. So I hear you, and I'll accept that response. But also addressing some of the comments we heard from the public commenters with respect to workforce development and environmental justice issues. We did pass a resolution last year. So I want to have a better understanding when we're doing any type of programming. How are we referencing that resolution and ensuring that we're doing our best to be in support and ensuring that whatever programming we do, we are focused on local hiring?
So I believe, Howard, I'll start and then maybe pass to you. I believe that resolution is largely around the execution or implementation of programs. This is for the development of the framework that will ultimately result in sort of outputs that are the initial concepts of those programs. So it is not looking to, at this point, build any new projects or implement directly. But I'll pass to Howard because I believe Howard was integral in the development of that resolution.
Yeah, I would just highlight that I think this works in concert with that. I think the purpose of that workforce environmental justice policy piece was to help formalize priorities around hiring, equitable priorities, both for wholesale procurement as well as some of our programs. So that is a policy that we have in place, and with our RFPs, we reference that policy in order to make explicit how we want to prioritize in terms of counterparty selection process and ensuring that high quality jobs are created through our various programs. So in many ways, these work together well, that policy piece being passed, this one being more of a strategic roadmap on the types of programs that we want to do. They would support each other, of course, in that way.
Okay, so as we proceed in the process, we'll be reminded of that in terms of how it's addressing the resolution and making sure. The reason why I'm bringing this up is I feel like we are evolving and just being reminded of how the JPA was first formed. I do want to make sure we don't lose sight of that. So I want to make sure that we're capturing that in our staff reports, just making sure that we're keeping that front and center.
Absolutely understand the importance of that. Is there, maybe I can ask a clarifying question, but is there something in this presentation that feels like it's not in line with that document? We didn't feel a need to, of course, represent that document when presenting a roadmap of this sort.
No, I guess just it's all gonna be dependent on the responses, right, from the consultants, how well they're gonna address that. And that leads to my next question, the selection criteria, who's gonna be making that determination of which consultant we go with? And kind of like the rubric and scoring, how are we determining that?
Andy,
So-
want me to turn it back to you?
Sure. The scoring will be presented as part of the RFP, and those components of that resolution around sort of location of the entity and the other metrics, those are part of the scoring. The selection is intended to be done via a staff panel that will review the proposals, conduct interviews, and then ultimately bring the contract to the board for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions online in the room? Yes, Member Anderson.
Thank you so much, Chair Gonzalez. I have a question, and this is kind of more about maybe framing the conversation. So definitely hear our community when they're talking about the other goals of AVA. And I wonder if it might be helpful in a presentation to the full board to have an orienting statement saying, here are the goals of AVA Community Energy. We're talking about this one goal of decarbonization with respect to these specific dollars, these specific programs. And then my question is really about the dollars involved. So the presentation said that the consultants, the budget has been set aside, but I believe we also have dollars set aside for this type of customer programming. So it might be good to have include that in the presentation so that I can't remember if it's 20 million or what the number is higher. But that might be helpful for us as board members to understand the dollars that we're talking about and allocating through this process and prioritizing through this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then my final thoughts. Thank you for all the members for their comments and questions. Focusing on the expression customer programs. We're talking about things like the e-bike program. We're talking about things like induction stove tops. Okay, and then what I think I heard, because I just want to kind of piece it all together, that we do have at least elements of a strategic roadmap with respect to supply, with respect to procurement. And in that process, we're considering things like local, should we build local? What are the costs and benefits of building local?
Correct.
We're considering, union labor. We're considering those factors, but that's apart and separate from this piece. Okay.
That's correct.
Oh, well, thank you. So that will close this item and we will proceed to our next item.
Thank you.
So our next item on the agenda, returning to the agenda where it might be hidden here, is item number 6, slice of day resource adequacy. And I have to assume, is it JP who's presenting? Shannon, there you are. Thank you. And perhaps we can add that to our, like a working agenda.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So we pass the baton to you, Shannon.
Thank you. Yes. So hi, I'm Shannon Rivers. I'm the Senior Manager of Power Resources, and I'll present on resource adequacy, the slice of day topic today. All right, so what is resource adequacy? It is a compliance product to ensure there is a plan for adequate resources to match customer demand with available generation at any hour in the day in the CAISO. And it is purchased as available capacity each month. And importantly, capacity is the ability to generate. It is not the actual generation itself. Okay, so first I want to start off by going over the previous framework for resource adequacy, the monthly peak requirement. Prior to 2025, AVA had 2 types of resource adequacy requirements, system and flexible. System RA is interconnected to the CAISO, and it is also energy that is imported from outside of the CAISO into the CAISO area. Flexible RA, it's determined by a resource's ability to increase output during the load ramp hours. and we consider battery storage to be a flex resource. On the right side there, the volume of RA AVA was required to procure in each month was based on AVA's peak customer demand and the planning reserve margin. The planning reserve margin is basically like a buffer on top of the requirement that we have to procure towards with resource adequacy to account for forecast errors or other uncertainties. Load serving entities must demonstrate compliance both to the CPUC and CAISO on both an annual and monthly basis. And the last bullet there, local RA and central procurement entity, the CPE. AVA was responsible for a local RA requirement in 2022 and years prior, but starting in 2023, the CPE has been responsible for a local RA procurement. And this is a illustration of the supply stack of the CAISO system under the single monthly peak requirement from September 2024. Each color represents a different resource, and along the y-axis, the unit of measure is megawatt hour. The point of this slide is really to show how we had a single target peak that we're trying to procure towards for each month of the year. So we had essentially 12 different targets, one for each month. Okay, so that was the overview of the previous framework. Now we're going to jump into the current slice of day framework. Starting in 2025, resource adequacy requirements changed to a slice of day structure. The intent was to minimize customer cost, meet hourly reliability needs, and adapt to a changing grid. I'm going to go through the requirements on the left side of the slide. The RA obligations are based on AVA's hourly share of CAISO load for the worst day of each month, plus a planning reserve margin. You can think of the worst day as the day in the month when the demand was highest. LSEs must demonstrate sufficient electricity supply across 24 hours of each month, and LSEs must procure towards their own load shape. Now we're going to look at the accounting rules on the right. Solar and wind resources are based on exceedance profiles, which is looking at historic availability in consideration of the region and technology. This is a complicated methodology, but generally at a high level, you can think of it taking into account the variability across wind and solar technologies and how solar has a different profile than wind. And it takes into account how there's variation in seasonality, region, and even throughout the day across these different resources. Another important note with this accounting is that wind and solar don't count for RA in an amount equal to the nameplate. So for example, if we have 100 megawatt nameplate solar, in the summertime, July, for example, we might get 30 megawatts midday contributions from that resource. And in the winter, it might be lower, around 10 megawatts. And then at night, we don't get any. So that's the kind of idea that this exceedance takes into account. Thermal resources are based on net qualifying capacity. This is the amount of a resource that has a dependable output, and it's taking into factors like operational constraints or outages. And the resource is assigned a value that's applied to all hours. So if there is a resource with 50 megawatt nameplate, we would see 50 megawatts an hour ending 1, so that's like 12 a.m. and all the way through the day we'd see that 50. And lastly, storage contributes up to the P max, which is the max power output. But it is limited by storage efficiency, and we need excess generation to charge the storage. So this is a 24-hour supply stack of the CAISO system. It's taking the same supply or portfolio that the previous single peak monthly illustration showed, but as you can see, it is a lot different. It is showing along the x-axis each hour of the day, 1 through 24, and on the y-axis we have megawatt hour. Similarly, as single peak graph, we have baseload resources and other wind, solar, et cetera, in different colors. Along the bottom are the baseload resources, like in the last example, the thermal that counts towards every hour. Those are on the bottom, and the variable resources like solar or wind are showing up in the middle of day in the yellow for solar, and then it's hard to see, but there is some wind along in the like a light green mint color. But then you can also see in the brighter green, the storage shifted to hours when the solar starts to drop off. And drilling into the storage a bit more, storage resources in the slice of day framework can shift RA from hours of excess to hours of need. The excess RA from generating resources is required to charge storage for storage capacity to count toward RA compliance obligations. And as a result, LSEs must procure generation RA in excess of RA compliance obligations to charge storage for discharge in other hours. So I have two hypothetical months under a slice of day at the bottom of the slide there. And the graphs both have the same x-axis and y-axis, the hour ending 1 through 24, and then the megawatt hour. The color blocks represent different resources. So thermals in turquoise, solars in pink, wind in purple, demand response in yellow, and storage in green. And both of these graphs are the same portfolio of resources, but are different months. And lastly, the RA obligation is shown in the blue line. So you can tell if we've met our hourly obligation where the color stacks at or above the blue line. And looking at the graph on the left, you can see that each hour is essentially meeting the obligation, and we would be compliant for this month. Each hour also has an equal amount of thermal, that's the turquoise. And then you can see the excess generation of the solar is in the middle of the day in the pink above the blue line. And that's the generation that we would use to then charge the storage to show up with the hours of need where we might have been short. And then let's shift to the right graph where we have the same portfolio of resources, but it's a different month. And you'll notice, well, it might be hard to notice actually, but the hourly RA obligation is different. It's higher in the graph on the right, and the solar capacity is lower. So a key takeaway here is that we can't have one portfolio achieve compliance throughout the year. This slice of day compliance program requires that we have a lot of 24-hour resources, and we functionally have to over-procure many hours to meet the peak demand hours. And with that last bit of information about the key takeaways, I think that's my last note and in taking the questions.
Okay, so thank you for the presentation. What I'd like to do, this is an informational item, correct? Yes. So let's go ahead and take public comment on this informational item, and then we can get into our dialogues, questions, etc. So do we have any public comment?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, so with that, I will close public comment on this item and then bring it back to committee members with their questions or explorations. Okay, we'll begin with Member Balch.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I mean, we've seen this a bit through the budgeting process. We were talking about that. Do you mind maybe staff just kind of outlining one of the challenges we've had is always getting insufficient RA, right? We've always had a challenge with sufficient RA, and now with the measurements and the unit of measure for adequacy, we're expecting a bit of a financial hit on this to be compliant, right? And we factored that into the budget. Could you remind me? I apologize. I want to make sure I've got this right. I don't know if that's Howard or
Yeah,
someone
maybe
else,
I can
by the
just
way.
comment on that. So I want to be clear, we are compliant on resource adequacy obligations for this year, and we have been for the last several years. Early on, upon launch, there were a couple of years where there were a few little misses there, but we have been compliant. This is the first year under this new slice of day regime. Last year was sort of a test year where there was an information reporting aspect. So I'm pleased to say, even with our growing load, that we have been compliant for this year, and we look to be compliant. We are ensuring compliance to this going forward as well. So that's been really critical. So we've accounted for in our budget full compliance in all of our procurement levels. And to some extent, obviously with some length, as Shannon has noted, we have, in order to be compliant, unfortunately, you do have to be over procured for certain hours in general. So we have assumed certain sales and certain months in order to ensure that we're sort of as optimized as possible from a financial budgeting perspective.
Okay, that's part one. Thank you for the reminder. I thought that was pretty close to what my memory was. Let's go to the second question I have, which is, I remember when I came on, we were acquiring rights to peaker plants in different areas that would come on for basically RA, right? Do we don't operate it. So it's basically just to make sure we're putting it into the grid, correct? So we're not sure if it goes on or off except for the RECs that come in, correct?
Resource adequacy is a compliance-based product, and it's what we in California have structured in place of, say, capacity, which is an energy-based product in some other markets, but they're very equivalent. Obviously, there's some regulatory rules that differ there, but it is an obligation for the generation units to bid into the market at certain hours in order to satisfy that resource adequacy obligation. So it is, when we procure resource adequacy, it's the obligation to be able to generate. It is not an obligation to actually generate. And if it does generate, that has nothing to do with in terms of our power content label. This is a separate and distinct energy product than, say, something that generates RECs or brown power that may show up in your power content label. So those are distinct, yes.
Thank you, Howard. Let me go a little further. So one of the issues was, back in the day, we looked at bringing on a natural gas peaker plant. I think it was down in Southern California region, for example, and there was a little bit of community pushback because it is natural gas and it was all for RA, right? So for us as Ava Community Energy, we only get that if the demand goes and it needs to turn on and it goes into the system, correct? That's where we would get.
That's not correct. So a couple clarifications there. One is, we did not bring a natural gas plant online. So where we procure resource adequacy from any thermal units, those are existing units that are already generating.
Right. Right.
So we may be procuring resource adequacy products from those existing plants, and we've done that selectively, of course. Some of the items that I think we've brought forward to the board specifically as it relates to thermal related RA is where we've added some form of long duration clean energy batteries to the grid as well, and sort of coupled the two products together. And so that's one thing I just want to draw that distinction. These are existing plants that we're procuring resource adequacy from in general. Two is, again, when we procure resource adequacy, it is an obligation that a generation unit is available to be able to serve the grid. It is not necessarily actually generating. That will all be done on an economic decision. If it does generate and we've procured resource adequacy alone, we're not actually supporting we're not hedged by that. Whether it's a gas unit or it's a battery, we are not necessarily hedged by that generation unit just because we procure resource adequacy. And of course, in some cases, we will fully procure all of the energy product that is provided. I'll say for many of our long-term PPAs that we do with solar or wind projects, we're procuring everything, right? We're procuring the energy hedge, we're procuring the resource adequacy, we're procuring the renewable energy certificates that come with that. But we also, of course, buy unique energy products depending on what we're out in the market for. So if you're buying resource adequacy alone, and that is where we've done that on some thermal units, we are not buying the hedge component of that, and we are not buying the implications or power content label as well. But that is all case specific, of course, depending on how the contracts are structured.
I apologize, Chair, if I may go a little further. I think you've helped me get over the hump on understanding, Howard. But so in theory, then if we are needing power as Ava customers, we'll buy off the CAISO grid. That comes with a rec or a label that affects us. And that's just this bag of goods basically on the open market we acquire.
Yeah, that's generally correct. How we hedge our actual energy needs, we have a variety of ways to do that.
Yeah.
We do short-term financial hedges, we do short-term physical hedges, we do long-term financial physical hedges. We buy them bundled, we buy them selectively. So there's a lot of different forms of it. But our decisions to hedge our energy supply, buying from CAISO, buying from a specific generation unit, are unique and distinct from how we procure our resource adequacy. So I think that's the most important thing. These are different energy products and totally separate and distinct.
Okay, and then my last question, which is, so obviously this is a new thing for all of us, right? All of the CCAs and power groups in California. So what's the enforcement element? Are they going to be a little lenient as they've rolled this out? If we've missed it by an accident, not intentional, just this is very precise, or much more precise than the way we used to do it. So, any thoughts on ramifications or potential? Well, just we don't want to be non-compliant, right? I mean, our goal is to be compliant. So
absolutely.
Thoughts on that?
And I'll just note, I wouldn't say that this is more precise than the prior regime. The prior regime was very precise in terms of setting a target and an obligation and measuring whether you're compliant to that obligation. This is more granularity relative to what previously in place. So now we're looking at 24 hours versus single peaks throughout the year, right? And so there was a lot of precision with how they measured that before, in the same way they do that now. This has been a process that's been in the works for a number of years. So while we're reporting on it now because we want to help educate the board on some of the changes in the regulatory construct, we've had many years to sort of prepare for this, and the CPUC has also had many years to prepare their regulatory platform to monitor compliance to this. With that said, there is still a lot of work to be done on this. This doesn't happen overnight. And there are continue to be areas that the CPUC is evaluating ways to improve upon the compliance platform, and that is also actively under review and debate and consideration for changes. So there's something, the CPUC is evaluating penalties, enforcement of penalties. They're also setting new target setting criteria for resource adequacy. So that is a sort of an ongoing process that is happening all times. With that said, of course, snapshot in time for right now, there's a clear compliance obligation. We're meeting that obligation, and there's a forward look on what compliance will look like, and it is an evolving picture. So certainly adds to the uncertainty and the challenges for us to ensure that we are procuring to our obligations, which are changing, quite frankly. But with that said, that every load serving entity needs to deal with that, and it's a very active engagement process with the CPUC to ensure that we're providing our commentary on how those rules may evolve over time in order to ensure combination of cost effectiveness and reliability, of course.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the reminder clarifications. Thank you, Chair.
You're most welcome. At this point, we'll come to Member Anderson.
Great, thank you so much. This may or may not be a question on topic, but I am really interested in the topic of microgrids and how those may help us with our resource adequacy either now or in the future. The idea of potentially utilizing AI. I feel like I have to ask a question about AI in every meeting that I'm in.
Nice.
This is my AI question. So wondering if that may be one of the solutions that's out there in the near future to help bring stored energy online when needed and kind of monitor storage as part of this equation. You do not have to answer that question. I'm just curious about it.
I'm not sure how related it is to the resource adequacy. The local programs team is working on like the VPP space, which theoretically could reduce our obligation in some of those hours because it's going to show up.
Yeah. I'll jump in quickly. So certainly Shannon is the expert on resource adequacy, but I can maybe speak briefly to our efforts around local development and customer programs. And so VPP is a virtual power plant that can either be load shifting or actual dispatch from batteries. So the load shifting just means you're going to shift when a car is charging from that hour to another hour because it'll be less congested. At this point, the technology that runs that, which is referred to as DERMS, Distributed Energy Resource Management System, like that is very new in the market. How you optimize and manage these VPPs, it's a very nascent market. And so we are looking to engage and sort of leverage these assets that are out in the community and compensate our customers for doing so. But the initial stage is going to be learnings. And then in time, you need to get scale because you need for the power resources team to really rely on these assets. We have to first prove that they are themselves reliable, that we can call on them and that these devices respond and that they're not being overridden in each individual home, or maybe it's larger like commercial systems. But at this point, we're really focused on residential. And then you also just need, volume that is meaningful. And in the world of power procurement, meaningful is really, really big. You need a lot of participants to reach that threshold. But I see Howard's hand is up too.
Howard, do you have some additional commentary there?
Sure, and certainly there's a few different elements there to unpack, so I'll keep my response brief, and we can always take some of that offline as well. But Director Anderson, you specifically talked about microgrids and sort of AI and data centers as it relates to that, and how that may implicate resource adequacy. And one important highlight I'd make is if it's a true microgrid, then we're talking about an islanded system, both in terms of supply and demand. And if that is truly the case and it is truly islanded, it should not implicate our need to serve that microgrid, unless of course we are the energy provider for that microgrid, and should not impact our resource adequacy obligations. I think practically speaking, there are a few microgrids out there that are truly islanded. And so therefore, the load serving entity is a provider of energy to a microgrid that may have a capability to island because it has some backup energy support or supply to meet its need in a time that there is a power outage. And in that instance, we as a load serving entity still have to be able to provide that power. And therefore, it is not truly islanded at all times, and therefore does have a resource adequacy obligation associated with that. And so there is a lot of discussion about how these new data centers may be able to come online and meet their energy needs, which can be very significant. And there is some talk about, well, it could be under microgrid and have its own generation on site. But I think the challenge there is that data center truly able to meet all of its energy needs in a truly islanded fashion without being interconnected to the grid? And if that is not the case, and there's an obligation for a load serving entity to serve that energy, then it does not, unfortunately, obviate the need to be able to provide resource adequacy and power to that unit. And if it's truly islanded, of course, there's other implications of whether that's actually a cost-effective way to provide energy to such a islanded system on a standalone basis.
Okay, thank you for all that information. It's a fascinating topic. Thank you.
Seeing no other hands, I do have some in the weeds questions that I'll ask afterwards, but I do have one big picture question, which is as we think about the change of regulatory environment, how are we thinking about the risk that's introduced in this new world? I mean, beyond a little bit more detail than, oh, we could be not compliant. Like what's going to drive the non-compliance? Is there going to be people are now going to hoard in certain type of capacity or resource adequacy? Like where do we see that risk exposure? Because it's just a different way of measuring and counting and what's required.
Right now, the whole grid has sufficient supply to be able to fulfill these obligations across all LSCs. So if there is a risk, I think it's further out in a couple of years when there could be more data centers on the grid and electrification is happening and more EVs. So that would increase our peak very likely. And I think that's maybe when we would have more of a challenge with, or I guess it's just more unknown rather, like the supply could show up and then the data center might not show up. But I'd say it's like out to a more near term where.
But if I'm understanding correctly, right now, if I look at all the resource adequacy that there is to be purchased, and someone's done the math of adding up every load serving entity needs to have this much RA by hour, by month in the worst day of the year or worst day of the month or whatever it happens to be the exact method. There, in theory, the market should be clearing or should clear adequately, pun intended. So I'll go to Howard on that one.
I'll just say fundamentally, I think what you stated is right. You have load serving entities that project their forecast, they forecast their load out in the future. You add that all together, you add buffer to that, and you apply a sort of a compliance obligation to all load serving entities at all of these hours at this granularity. I think the uncertainty to things is if the grid is stressed beyond the buffer, that can potentially lead to reliability issues. That wouldn't necessarily mean you're not compliant from a resource adequacy perspective, but it could lead to stresses to the grid. You also have other factors where what is being constantly evaluated and debated from a regulatory perspective is what is that buffer? What is adequate buffer? And how are you forecasting your load? What are the methodologies to do that? What is the vetting process by the regulatory authorities and the load serving entities to get alignment there? And what do you count as resource adequacy? Whether you're counting a battery product that has solar paired with it, or if it's a standalone battery product, what are you counting for a wind project, which has certain calculations associated with how much resource adequacy coverage that actually gets, product it actually gets through that regulatory calculation. You also have factors related to import RA. So if you're importing energy from outside of the state, what qualifies there as resource adequacy? So there's the basics of supply and demand and how that match, but then there's the precision in which you can actually forecast that supply and demand to ensure that you're meeting those obligations. And then there's the sort of the regulatory construct of, well, what is the obligation based off of in terms of that buffer, and what do we feel is sufficient buffer? The more you increase that buffer, the more cost there is, but the better your reliability is. And then there's a lot of nuance around how do you calculate resource adequacy with all the different types of technology of generation there's out there, and what value do you put on import RA or import energy that comes in to qualify for resource adequacy. That's where you get really complex and what a lot of the regulatory discussion and commentary is about.
And so just clearly, it's a question that I ask a lot, where's the risk? And so the comment, not so much the question, is just making sure that we're attuned to those sources of risk, and that as the regulators are pivoting, and sometimes they pivot unexpectedly quickly, that we have thought about, well, what is that exposure? And could we be caught flat-footed along with many others who are caught flat-footed? Therefore, we're out of market, everyone's crowding the market, last minute, blah, 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 blah. So just being sensitive to what those elements are. Okay, I think we've covered all the questions at this point in time. Seeing no further hands, so I will close this item and bring us to the next item on our agenda, which I believe is the opportunity for any final committee member comments and request for placing items on the agenda, on future agendas. Do we have any at this time? Seeing none, we will close this item and move to our final item on the agenda, which is the time of the meeting, time and place, at least time, of our next meeting. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, October 1st, 2025 at 3 p.m. I assume we do not know the location yet, and that's why it's not on the agenda. Very well. So it'll either be here or someplace else.
It'll be likely back in our office,
but we just leave a little bit of space just in case. Obviously, we print our agendas to meet the Brown Act requirements. Look at that future agenda when it is printed prior to the October 1st meeting. With that, the time is 4:24 and we are adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you all.